All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are going deeper than a Walther PPK bullet
Ooh, I like deep.
into the mind of Daniel Craig's James Bond.
I love it already.
You've seen the movies, the grit,
Oh, yeah.
let's be honest, questionable emotional choices.
Yeah.
But what if I told you there's a psychological framework that kind of explains it all?
Right.
Get ready for an Enneagram deep dive.
Ready.
Specifically, why Daniel Craig is like a textbook example of the counterphobic six.
All right, so what's fascinating here is that this particular type is also known as the sexual six,
Okay.
which in Enneagram terms, it's not about like seduction.
Right.
It's more about this intense energy, this certain magnetism.
Okay.
And it might seem counterintuitive at first, right? Secret agent, you think, oh, fearless, unflappable, right?
Right.
But the core of a six, regardless of subtype, is fear and the need for security.
Okay, that's intriguing already.
Yeah.
So how does that play out in a guy who, jumps headfirst into danger? I mean, don't sixes usually, avoid scary situations?
That's where the counterphobic part comes in.
Okay.
So instead of shying away from fear, they confront it head on. It's almost like a defense mechanism. They're so afraid of something that they try to control it by facing it directly.
Hold on. So you're saying, every time I make a dark joke to avoid a serious topic, it's my inner counterphobic six coming out?
Not necessarily, but it is a great example of how sixes use humor to deflect and maintain that sense of control.
Okay.
But let's take a classic Bond scenario, okay?
Okay.
That insane parkour chase in Casino Royale, remember
Yeah.
that's like the very first action sequence we see in the Craig era, establishes his Bond immediately,
Right.
leaping across construction cranes, facing potential death with an icy stare. Now, is that just Bond being cool, or is there something deeper going on?
You're telling me that's not just movie magic. There's, an actual psychological explanation for that death-defying swagger.
Precisely. It's not genuine fearlessness. It's courage fueled by a deep-seated fear. This need to prove he can overcome it.
Oh,
And this connects to another layer of this subtype, the themes of strength and beauty.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not just about physical prowess. It's this inherent need to appear strong, capable, even when terrified. They loathe showing weakness.
So it's more than just a stiff upper lip kind of thing then.
Exactly. It's an ingrained defense mechanism, a way of life.
Wow.
It's woven into their very being. Think back to that scene in Casino Royale after Bond's been tortured.
Yeah.
He's clearly in agony, yet he makes a quick about the experience.
Right.
It's not just a cool one-liner, it's a deliberate act of masking his vulnerability.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I can almost see a wall going up in that moment.
Right.
He's using humor to deflect the pain, to project this image of strength, even when he's at his most vulnerable.
Precisely. And, we all have our own ways of hiding vulnerability.
Of course.
But for the counterphobic six, it's almost an art form.
Wow. It's how they navigate the world, how they protect themselves, and it makes for some truly captivating character moments, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It adds this whole new layer to those scenes.
Yeah.
And speaking of complex dynamics, let's talk about Bond and M.
Yes.
That whole push and pull, that is peak six behavior when it comes to authority.
Ah, yes, the classic six dilemma.
Right.
Craving guidance, but simultaneously resisting being controlled.
Yeah.
They want a strong leader, someone they can trust to keep them safe, but they'll constantly test the boundaries,
Right.
push back against any perceived attempt to restrict their freedom.
It's like they need that authority figure to prove themselves worthy of that trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
And who better to embody that than Judi Dench's M?
Exactly. She's the perfect foil for Bond's rebellious streak.
Right.
He's always breaking the rules, going rogue, yet ultimately, his loyalty to M is unwavering. Skyfall really drives that home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He might be a constant thorn in her side, but he'd die for her without a second thought. It's interesting. It's not a straightforward rebellion.
Right.
He clearly respects her, needs her in a way.
Absolutely.
It's like he wants her to be strong enough to handle his tests.
That's a brilliant observation. It's not simply about disobedience. It's a way of testing the strength and reliability of the authority figure. They're looking for reassurance, confirmation that they're in safe hands. And for a six, particularly a counterphobic six, that reassurance is paramount.
So there's actually a method to the madness, a purpose behind all that rule breaking.
Absolutely. It's not just about being difficult.
Right.
It's a deeply ingrained need to assess the trustworthiness of their leader, to ensure they can rely on them when things get tough.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, things always get tough for James Bond.
Right, of course.
But we have much more to uncover about his complexities, particularly when it comes to trust and relationships.
Ooh, that's good.
Are you ready to dive deeper into the heart of the counterphobic six?
Let's do it.
Okay, great.
So we've established Daniel Craig's Bond. He's a counterphobic 6, driven by fear,
Right.
but confronting it head on.
Yeah.
But how does that play out, like, in his relationships?
Mm.
Because let's face it, Bond isn't exactly known for his, like, stable love life.
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because for a 6, particularly the sexual 6, trust is everything.
Yeah.
And yet it's also the thing that terrifies them the most.
Oh, what? Okay.
They crave intimacy, they crave connection,
Right.
but their fear of betrayal often sabotages those very things they desire.
So it's not just a case of, like, commitment issues then. There's
No.
a deeper, like, psychological dynamic at play.
Precisely. It's not a lack of desire for connection. It's a fear of the vulnerability that comes with it.
Okay.
And for someone like Bond, who operates in a world where betrayal can be fatal,
Right, of course.
that fear is amplified tenfold.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, some people just enjoy the thrill of the chase,
Yeah.
right? Is it always about anxiety with 6s?
Yeah.
Or could it be that Bond simply thrives on that, like, dangerous lifestyle?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the complexity of human behavior.
Right.
There's certainly an element of excitement and adrenaline that comes with Bond's line of work.
Of course.
But for a 6, those risks aren't just about the thrill.
Right.
They're a way of managing their anxiety, of proving to themselves that they can handle anything that, life throws at them.
So it's less about enjoying the danger
Right.
and more about needing to conquer it.
Exactly. It's a way of mastering their fear by facing it head on.
Hmm.
And this ties back to the physicality of the counterphobic 6,
Okay.
which we touched on briefly earlier.
Yeah.
They often have a very specific posture, stiff neck, shoulders hunched,
Yeah.
as if braced for impact. It's this armored stance that reflects their internal state of hypervigilance.
Wait, so you're telling me that Bond's blunt instrument vibe, isn't just a stylistic choice by Daniel Craig?
Yeah.
It's actually rooted in the psychology of the 6.
Absolutely. Think about the way Craig moves as Bond.
Okay.
He's not as suave or graceful as previous iterations.
No.
There's a rawness and almost animalistic intensity to his movements.
Yeah.
It's like he's constantly preparing for a fight, even when he's just walking into a casino.
Now that you mention it, I do remember reading that Craig wanted to portray Bond as more of a bruiser.
Right.
I guess it goes beyond just wanting to shake things up. It's
Yeah.
actually a very insightful way of embodying the physicality of a counterphobic 6.
Precisely. And it's not just about physical strength. It's about projecting an aura of power and control.
Right.
It's a way of deterring potential threats,
Yeah.
of sending the message that they're not someone to be trifled with.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So we've got the internal fear driving the external bravado. But how does that actually play out in Bond's relationships?
Yeah.
Because it can't be easy to let someone in when you're constantly on guard expecting betrayal.
You're absolutely right. And that's where we see the tragic side of the 6. The way their fear of vulnerability can sabotage the very connections they crave.
Vesper Lynd in Casino Royale immediately comes to mind.
Yes.
Their whole relationship is heartbreaking because you can see Bond struggling with his feelings, wanting to trust her,
Yeah.
but ultimately being betrayed by his own fears.
That's a perfect example of how the 6 anxieties can manifest in their romantic relationships.
Right.
They fall hard, they idealize their partner,
Yeah.
but then the slightest hint of suspicion can send them spiraling into doubt and paranoia.
It's like they're almost waiting for the other shoe to drop, setting themselves up for disappointment.
Right.
And Bond, being who he is, probably has more reason than most to be suspicious.
Exactly. His line of work only reinforces that fear of betrayal. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. He expects people to let him down, so he pushes them away before they have a chance to hurt him.
And yet there are moments when he does let his guard down, when he allows himself to be vulnerable. And those moments are so powerful because they're so rare, so unexpected.
Absolutely. Think about his relationship with M.
Yeah.
It's not romantic, obviously, but there's a deep connection there.
Right.
A mutual respect and even affection
Yeah.
that transcends their professional roles.
Right.
And it's precisely because it's not a traditional romantic relationship that Bond is able to let his guard down, to allow himself to be vulnerable without the fear of romantic betrayal.
You know, it's interesting how he tests her, too.
Yeah.
Like, he needs to push her away to see if she'll come back.
Right.
You know, if she's strong enough to handle his baggage.
Yeah.
And she always does.
That's a key aspect of the counterphobic six's behavior.
Okay.
They test people, they push them away.
Yeah.
Not because they want to sabotage the relationship, but because they need that reassurance, that proof of unwavering loyalty. It's a way of ensuring that the people they let into their lives are truly worthy of their trust.
It's a twisted kind of logic.
Yeah.
But I can see how it makes sense for someone like Bond, you know?
Right.
Someone who lives in a world where trust can be a matter of life and death.
And it makes his journey all the more compelling, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Because despite his fears, his anxieties, his tendency to self-sabotage,
Right.
he still manages to form these deep, meaningful connections.
Right.
And ultimately, it's those connections that save him, that redeem him.
All right, I'm hooked. Let's unpack this idea of redemption
Okay.
and how Bond's sickness ultimately shapes his, like, heroic arc.
I like that.
Bring on part 3.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we've explored kind of the darker side of Daniel Craig's Bond.
Right.
The fears, the trust issues, the almost self-destructive tendencies of the counterphobic six.
Yeah.
But we've also talked about, like, those flickers of vulnerability.
Right.
Those moments when he lets someone in.
Yeah.
And how those relationships ultimately seem to, like, ground him.
Right.
So how does all of this add up to a hero?
That's the fascinating paradox, isn't it? You wouldn't think that a guy fueled by anxiety and distrust would be saving the world.
Right.
But Bond's sickness isn't just a collection of flaws. It's the source of his strength, too.
Wait, are we saying his paranoia makes him a better spy? Isn't that a bit counterintuitive?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
Bond's hypervigilance, his constant awareness of potential threats,
Right.
that's what allows him to anticipate danger, to outmaneuver his enemies.
Hmm.
He's always a step ahead because he's already considered every possible scenario, every potential betrayal.
So it's like that always watching, always ready quality we talked about,
Yeah,
but on a larger scale.
exactly.
It's not just about personal safety. It's about protecting the mission, the greater good.
Exactly. And his distrust, while it can make relationships difficult,
Yeah.
it also means he's not easily fooled. He sees through facades.
Right.
He questions motives. He
Yeah.
doesn't just take things at face value. In a world of spies and double agents, that kind of skepticism can be a lifesaver.
Yep. Definitely.
Wouldn't you say?
And his need to test people,
Yes.
as frustrating as it can be,
Right.
it also ensures that those who earn his trust
Right.
are truly worthy of it.
Precisely. It's a trial by fire.
Yeah.
And those who survive it,
Right.
like,
Right.
and eventually Madeline,
Yeah.
become his anchors, the people he can truly rely on in a world that's constantly trying to pull him under.
You know, it's making me think about all those classic Bond tropes.
Yeah.
The gadgets, the car chases, the impossible escapes.
Right.
Are those also part of this sickness? Is it more than just like action movie spectacle?
I think there's a strong argument to be made for that.
Okay.
Remember we talked about how sixes manage their anxiety by confronting it head on?
Right.
Well, what could be more confronting than jumping out of an exploding building?
Right.
Or facing down a villain with a laser beam aimed at your head?
So it's not just about thrill-seeking or showing off.
Right.
It's about proving to himself that he can overcome any obstacle, any fear.
Exactly. It's a way of conquering those inner demons by externalizing the conflict, by proving that he can handle anything the world throws at him.
Right.
And in a way, isn't that the ultimate test of heroism?
Yeah.
To face your fears and do what needs to be done, even when every fiber of your being is screaming at you to run the other way?
I'm starting to see Daniel Craig's Bond in a whole new light.
Yeah,
It's not just about the physical feats, it's about the internal battle he's constantly waging.
absolutely.
And winning, for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what makes his ultimate sacrifice in No Time to Die so powerful.
Right.
He finally chooses love over self-preservation, over that deeply ingrained need to protect himself at all costs. It's like he's finally transcended his sickness, not by erasing it, but by integrating it into a greater purpose.
It's almost like he's saying, yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I have trust issues.
Right.
but I'm not going to let those things control me anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose love, choose connection, even if it means losing everything.
And in that moment, he becomes something more than just a spy, more than just a hero. He becomes a symbol of hope, a testament to the human capacity for growth and transformation, even in the face of our deepest fears.
Wow. This has been an incredible journey.
Yeah, it has.
It's like watching those films with like a whole new level of understanding.
That's the beauty of the Enneagram, isn't it?
Yeah.
It gives us a framework for understanding ourselves and others in a deeper, more nuanced way.
Right.
And it can even make watching action movies a more enriching experience.
Well, folks, there you have it.
Yeah.
Our deep dive into the mind of Daniel Craig's James Bond.
Right.
The counterphobic six who redefined what it means to be a hero.
I agree.
We hope you enjoyed this exploration, and maybe, just maybe, you've learned a little something about yourselves along the way.
I think so.
Until next time, remember, embrace your complexities, face your fears, and never underestimate the power of a well-placed martini.
Cheers to that.